What's up guys, at the Dean here, back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about how you can become a film photography pro in 2019. Let's go. So before we get started, you're probably thinking, well, I need a film camera. I don't have a film camera, which one should I shoot? I have a few here that I think would be great. So here we go. So in front of me here I have a variety ranging from 35mm to rangefinder, also to medium format, but the one we're going to be talking about today is the one and only Pentax K1000. So I'm just going to share a little bit about this camera and why I think this is the camera for you to start on. So without further ado, let's get into this bad boy. So one particular reason a lot of people don't shoot film is because they haven't thought about it, it's too expensive, or they just don't know how to get into it. So if you're wanting to start shooting film, this camera here, the Pentax K1000, is a fantastic one to start on. It's entirely mechanical. The only thing that it has is a battery for the light meter inside. So if you already shoot digital or mirrorless, and you've got a little bit of experience, this camera is fantastic. If you have no experience at all, I would still recommend it because it'll actually force you to learn about your ISO and your shutter speed and your aperture. The reason being, it doesn't have like a automatic setting, so like with something like a Canon A1 program, they have like an aperture priority, which will basically, you can select the aperture that you want to shoot on, and then it will tell you what settings to put it on. But I still prefer this because it will actually force you to learn about photography, about lighting, about how to compensate your settings for each other. So I'm just going to dive in and basically show you the principles behind this, which would be your ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. So basically, first of all, you're going to have a film stock. So here I have a roll of Kodak Gold 200, and essentially the speed, or the ISO, is 200. So that will essentially control the grain and the lighting of the film. But if you want to change that, you can rate your film at a different speed. So essentially, what you'll need to know is, if on here, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, there's a tiny little white box which will have the speed of your film. Currently mine is set to 100 because the last roll of Kodak 200 that I put in, I wanted to overexpose. So I shot or rated my speed or my ISO at half of the roll. So essentially, if you want to overexpose, you shoot at half the speed. So I shot at 100 instead of 200. But with a roll of film in here, once you've got it set, ideally you don't want to change that number once it's in there, because then your exposures will all come out different. You want to keep it nice and consistent. So you're not really going to touch that at all. And then second, you have your shutter speed, which ranges from 1/1000th of a second. English is hard. 1/1000th of a second to 1 second. But you also have bulb if you want to, if you want to do a long exposure. But that's a whole different topic, especially if you're new to photography. And then lastly, on the front is your aperture. So there's a range of numbers that go from f1.4 to f22, but that will change depending on your lens. So on this camera, I have a 50mm f1.4, which means that I can get a really nice and blurry background. So if I'm shooting a portrait and you see that really nice blur in the background, that's what this lens can do. Secondly, you'll need to know how to load the film. Obviously, that is a big part of shooting film, and probably the part that a lot of people are most intimidated by. So you basically have this winder here, which you will use to wind your film after you have shot the roll. don't worry, I'll have some B-roll going in the background and I'll do a close-up so you can see what's going on. But you'll basically just want to pull this lever up and then it will open up the film tray. So you're going to pop your roll in here and then you're going to wind it across and you're going to basically put the film, there'll be some sprocket holes that you want to sit your film in, and then once you've got it in here you just wind it on. It's not too difficult, but I'll have some B-roll playing so you can see what's going on. And then once you've got that in there, you have another it's not really a dial, it's more just like your frame indicator. So there's a couple dots here and a 0, and what you want to do is you just want to wind it, take a couple shots, and then eventually that'll be sitting at 1 or at 0, which means you're ready to shoot your frame. So it's not too difficult. It's like anything else, with practice you'll get better, but film is definitely trial and error, so it's going to take you a little while to figure it out. Find out what film stocks you like, just how you want to expose or rate your film. There's literally endless possibilities. You can shoot however you want, shoot whatever you want, and there are certain I guess films that are more ideal for different situations. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is obviously film, and it's kind of hard to know which one to pick first, but I actually would recommend a consumer grade film. This one is Kodak Gold 200. It's pretty cheap, and you can buy it in bulk rolls for fairly cheap. I don't know what the US prices are, but in New Zealand I think it's like $30 for 3 or 4 rolls, so it probably works out to be like $8 a roll. It's fairly cheap, but you can get some amazing results from it. So I'll play through some scans that I recently got back, and they are actually shot on Kodak Gold 200, which I've rated at half the speed, so they're going to be quite bright, a little bit slightly overexposed, but they should have some nice warm tones. Kodak Gold is very nice for like sunset, outdoor landscape photography, and it's got very, very nice warm tones, so you'll probably see a lot of that in some of the photos that I'm flicking through. I'll also put through some photos of this one. This is a medium format, and I'll just show some images that I've shot with this one recently. But I prefer Kodak. The Fujifilm film stocks tend to lean towards the cooler side, so like the greens and the blues. But if you're into that sort of thing, by all means, you can try out the Fuji Superior, also the Fuji C200 or C400. I know that they are, or I recently heard that they might be discontinuing those, but I'm sure you can find them online. They're great films for the cooler tones, but I personally prefer Kodak's warmer tones. So you want to go for something consumer, so the Kodak Gold 200 is a great one to start on, and then kind of work your way up to like the professional grade films, or you can just shoot professional grade films straight away. I think the first roll I ever shot on this thing was Portra 400, which has amazing colors, but they are a bit more expensive because they are a professional grade film. So if you're looking to get into film, I would recommend Kodak Gold 200. It's a great film to try out. So there you go. Now you're gonna be a pro. Let's get it. Alright guys, that wraps up the video for today. Thanks for tuning in. I will link below just the film stocks that we talked about, and if I can find one of these, I might link one of these as well. Definitely have a look if you're wanting to get into film. You can pick up a Pentax K1000 for like $100. I think I saw one for like $50 online the other day. But they take amazing photos. I've been really happy with my experience so far. There's just something about film that you cannot recreate digitally. They just create this really beautiful, nostalgic feel, and I definitely / highly recommend getting into film. It will make you a much better photographer as well, because it will teach you everything that you need to know about lighting. So that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back again with another one soon. See you later. One more important thing that I forgot to mention was the light meter. So the light meters in these cameras are really easy to use. So I'll have an illustration playing at the same time, but as I'm telling you this, basically you'll see like a frame. Through your frame there will be a meter on the side, and on the right side at the top there'll be a plus, and at the bottom there'll be a minus, and there'll be a gap in the middle, and there'll be a needle that will basically indicate how much light is coming in, and if the needle is close to the plus sign, it's overexposed, or that the image will be overexposed, and if the needle is sitting close to the minus, then it's going to be underexposed. So if you've got that needle sitting sort of in the middle where the gap is, you're going to be pretty close to having a balanced exposure. So that's another reason I think this camera is great, because if you don't know how the exposures and the aperture, that sort of thing work, you can just use the meter as an indicator, which will let you know if you need to bump up your shutter speed or lower it, or if you need to change your aperture, the needle will move accordingly. And if you can get it sitting in the middle, you're pretty much going to get a balanced exposure. But rule of thumb is generally don't shoot below 1/60th of a second, because if you shoot below 1/60th of a second, your frame's likely going to be like blurry. So if something fast is moving, or if you move your hand, the image will probably come out blurry. So if you can, try stick to a 60th or 1/25th at minimum. So that's another thing that's really handy about this camera as well.